Well, hello and welcome back to our journey through the Proverbs. My name is Steve Pederson, and we are now on day 10 of our journey of 31 days through the book of Proverbs. And starting with chapter 10, now we've left behind the introductory chapters of 1 through 9, where they're more story. Now in chapter 10 and through the rest of the Proverbs, until the last couple of chapters, this is where we get into the little bite-sized nuggets of just the single verse. Like each verse by itself kind of stands alone. Each verse kind of is its own little nugget of wisdom. So this is one of the things that I really love about the book of Proverbs. Just a couple of observations here when it comes to understanding this several thousand-year-old wisdom, book of wisdom and writings of wisdom. The Proverbs are usually written in a couplet, and that is there's two lines of the verse, and the first line and the second line are going to do one of a couple of things. They're either going to contrast one another, so one might be like, hey, this is what the righteous do, and then the second line is this is what the wicked do in contrast. Or the couplet might be sort of a restatement or reiteration of what, or a rewording of what the first line said. So you can kind of look for that as we're looking through these individual verses. One thing that I want to point out is that up until now, what I've done is I've kind of adjusted the text a little bit. We've been reading from the World English Bible, and as is the case with most Bibles, they use the word like son. They don't use non-gender specific terms, and it hasn't used those terms very much, so I've actually changed those. So where it says my child, it's actually my son. And as I've started reading through these Proverbs, I'm like, that's a lot of editing. So we're just going to stick with the word son. It'll say son, it'll say man, it'll say him, it'll be a reference to a male, but I don't want you to get hung up on that. I want you to obviously understand that this applies to women as well, men, women, children, young, old, alike, everybody, no matter who you are, this applies to you. We're just going to go with the words that they're using. And one other thing is that there is a lot of antiquated references in here. There might be some verses where I just don't get that at all, like kind of the references, and that's okay. We'll just kind of breeze by that for now, but maybe you want to take a note of it and say, I want to come back to that verse later because I really want to understand what they mean by that expression that they used back in those days. And speaking of that, one last thing here before we jump into the text for today is you may want to keep like a pen and a piece of paper handy, because we're just gonna read through each of these proverbs. We're not going to stop. And if one in particular stands out to you, maybe just jot down the verse number so that you can come back to it later. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into Proverbs chapter 10. Okay, Proverbs 10 and verse 1, it says, "A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son brings grief to his mother." Verse 2, "Treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivers from death. The Lord will not allow the soul of the righteous to go hungry, but he thrusts away the desire of the wicked. He becomes poor who works with a lazy hand, but the hand of the diligent brings wealth. He who gathers in summer is a wise son, but he who sleeps during the harvest is a son who causes shame. Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. The wise in heart accept commandments, but A chattering fool will fall. He who walks blamelessly walks securely, but he who perverts his ways will be found out. One winking with the eye causes sorrow, but a chattering fool will fall. The mouth of the righteous is a spring of life, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all wrongs. Wisdom is found on the lips of him who has discernment, but a rod is for the back of him who is void of understanding. Wise men lay up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near ruin. The rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. The labor of the righteous leads to life. The increase of the wicked leads to sin. He is in the way of life who heeds correction, but he who forsakes correction leads others astray. He who hides hatred has lying lips. He who utters slander is a fool. In the multitude of words there is no lack of disobedience, but he who restrains his lips does wisely. The tongue of the righteous is like choice silver. The heart of the wicked is of little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but the foolish die for lack of understanding. The Lord's blessing brings wealth, and he adds no trouble to it. It is a fool's pleasure to do wickedness, but wisdom is a man of understanding's pleasure. What the wicked fear will overtake them, but the desire of the righteous will be granted. When the whirlwind passes, the wicked is no more, but the righteous stand firm forever. As vinegar to the teeth and as smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. The fear of the Lord prolongs days, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened. The prospect of the righteous is joy, but the hope of the wicked will perish. The way of the Lord is a stronghold to the upright, but it is a destruction to the workers of iniquity. The righteous will never be removed, but the wicked will not dwell in the land. The mouth of the righteous produces wisdom, but the perverse tongue will be cut off. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked is perverse. Well, there you have chapter 10 of the Proverbs. So many great Proverbs in there. To me, so many of them stood out, but in particular, I want to focus on verse 22, where it says, "The Lord's blessing brings wealth, and he adds no trouble to it." What in the world does that mean? Well, it sounds kind of nice. The Lord's blessing brings wealth. I like wealth. I'm sure you like wealth. And he adds no trouble to it. Let's talk about that for a second. What this kind of reminds me of is in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 19, it says, "Moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy in their toil, this is a gift of God." Similarly, in Deuteronomy chapter 8 and verse 18, it says, "But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth. The thing that I feel like this verse is saying to me is that when your wealth and increase comes from God, you can feel great about it. Let's read that verse again. The Lord's blessing brings wealth, and he adds no trouble to it. Conversely, if you think of the opposite, getting rich by cheating or cutting corners, cheating out others, lying perhaps, only if you get rich by doing that does your wealth give you no peace of mind. So the increase that God gives you comes with a sort of peace of mind to it. And I think when you know that it comes from God, it's so much easier to share it with other people. But when you feel like it comes entirely by your own effort and you don't really see God in the picture, then you tend to want to hold on to it and have a hard time sharing it with other people. I think money is a form of energy that comes to you from the Lord. It's not entirely because of your performance. Obviously, I'm not saying just quit your job and sit back and let the money roll in. That's probably not going to happen. But I'm sure you can think of times in your life where money has come to you completely unexpectedly. And whether it comes to you, like I have this saying, it's not actually my saying, but it's a saying that I love, and that is, money comes to me in expected and unexpected ways. You see, there's nothing that can get in the way of God blessing you, or it's not because of a job necessarily. Maybe you have that job because God gave you that job, but the point being that your increase in your wealth, when you see it as a gift of God, it can come from anywhere, and then you see it as, man, this is just God blessing me, and because of that, you feel great about it, and there's no need to feel like, oh, somebody's going to steal it or whatever. So my affirmation for this verse is, my wealth comes from the Lord. Well, that's my takeaway. Let's take a look at another takeaway from another one of our viewers. And this is actually a very special viewer. Not that all of them aren't, but this one is particularly special to me because this is coming from my wife. My wife, Stephanie, gave us a little something to think about, and that is from chapter 10, verse 9, where it says, "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out." She goes on to say, this verse and chapter from Proverbs reminds me to stay with truth. Life comes from truth and not shortcuts or lies. Interesting. That sounds a little bit like what we were just talking about with money. Sometimes, she says, integrity and choosing God's way is difficult, but in the end, it is the only choice for me to live with a clear conscience and be truly happy. If I'm looking for security, then I need to choose integrity. I love that. And her affirmation for us is, I walk securely because I choose integrity. Love that. Very, very powerful. Well, these affirmations will be on our Instagram channel, the Daily Christians Affirmations Instagram channel. I want to thank Stephanie, my wife, wonderful wife, for sharing her takeaway with us. And I'd also love to hear what your takeaway is. So please consider leaving a comment. Let us know, let everybody know, what did you get out of Proverbs chapter 10? What kind of insight did the Spirit put on your heart today? And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. There's more information in the description area on how to connect with us and anything else about today's lesson. For now, so long. Thanks so much for joining us for day 10 of the Proverbs, and hopefully we'll catch you back here tomorrow. Take care.